Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ready, Set, Rise. My name is Michael Siervo. I'm your host here, and one of the great things about this show is, of course, it's called Ready, Set, Rise, getting yourself ready mentally, physically, and spiritually, setting yourself up for success, and then, of course, rising to the challenge. Well, RISE stands for Real Individuals Sharing Excellence. One of the things I love being in this seat is interviewing amazing stories of fantastic people who've overcome adversity, have had massive success, and really has just taken life by the horns and been very resilient. One such person that I'm so excited when I saw this on my schedule is our next guest, and he embodies the word rise, and he certainly has risen to where he is right now. He is a former soldier, elite athlete, entrepreneur, senior business executive, model, one of the top models in Canada, public speaker, and he came to Canada as a new immigrant in a successful career in banking and insurance, in the retail space as well, in the UK and in Europe. He launched his own and owned his own insurance company here in Canada and has spoken on countless stages across North America and the UK. He's helped many organizations as a strategic business consultant and is currently the CEO of the oldest and most prestigious theater in Calgary, which is the Grand Theater. Of course, he sits on a number of advisory boards for startup companies and entrepreneur incubators in Canada. And he sat on the Alberta Board of Directors of the Certified Management Consultants. He's volunteered for so many different organizations and mentored for Futurpreneur Canada, Haskayne Business School, and the Hunter Center for Entrepreneurship. He has a particular interest in social enterprise ventures, and he is one of the best dressed people in Calgary, certainly a classy individual, elegance, to the T's, one of my good friends, and I'm so excited to have Mr. Tony McGrath. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I actually just fell in love with myself.
I did too, man. Jeez.
I can't believe that's me.
That is you, my friend. Yeah. And, you know, first of all, how we kick off every show is I always ask our guests, do you have one quote or motto that you currently live by today and why?
I've got a couple of hundred. But,
okay.
I actually posted one this morning that I love, and I remember it from years ago, and it's by Bob Dylan.
Great songwriter.
Incredible. Not a musician I love particularly, but an incredible songwriter and poet. But it was the very best that I can be is me, whoever that is. And like I love that so much because me, Tony, there's so many different iterations of me over the decades I've been on the planet, and like my whole body regenerates, I think, every 5 years. So I don't even have the same cells that I had 5 years ago. That's quite staggering to think about that. And you know, you and I have talked a fair bit about reinvention before, and I'm kind of. I reinvent by accident. You know, I can't say I ever really had a real clear-cut career path. I didn't really have any clear picture at 20 what I wanted to be in life. I'm not particularly materialistic.
Right.
So I have reinvented myself by accident, like over and over, and I'm about to do it again.
I know. I'm excited. I know.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what that looks like, and I think. Bob Dylan's really epitomizes that to me. Marcy and I, about 3 years ago, drove down to Palm Desert to see the Desert Trip weekend music festival, and Bob Dylan was performing at that, and we were very fortunate to get tickets from friends of ours in Seattle. But it was the Stones, the Who, Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Roger Waters, and Neil Young, all in one weekend.
Wow.
In my whole life, I've never seen a lineup like that. And Bob Dylan was the least inspiring musician there, but if you sat and listened to his lyrics and his words, like a remarkable man. So it just so happens that's the one I like this morning.
But you know, it's relevant though.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. Yeah,
because we talk about just reinventing ourselves, and that's really what life is all about.
I think so. Whoever I am. You know, and I hear an awful lot of talk amongst our younger generations about finding myself. You know, like I don't really know who I am even at 64. I'm really comfortable with Tony. Who am I? I don't really know. Not really. I found myself like accidentally a few times wandering around in the wilderness, but yeah, I think I love that saying. You don't have to be somebody.
You know, it's interesting because that entire phrase that you're talking about, that you're just reinventing yourself, finding yourself. There's a quote that says something along the lines of, "Not all those who wander are lost."
No,
right, and that's the beauty of life, is that you're constantly finding yourself.
I think so. And if you go looking for yourself, you're going to get lost. Like, you're just better off living in the day and accepting who you are in that particular moment.
Living the moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting. 2020 has been an interesting year, to say the least. A lot of things happened.
Yeah.
Of course, Sean Connery passed away. I'm a big Sean Connery fan. He passed away. How does it feel? I know. So how does it feel to now take over Sean Connery's title as most sexiest man alive? How does that feel? Because he's gone now. Next man up, right?
I think that would be a very far-fetched description of me. You'd have to ask Marcy that one, but I think that's a far-fetched description.
Well, there are some similarities. I'll tell you the similarities between you and Sean.
Yeah.
First of all, so Sean has created many different characters. He's played a lot of different roles on the big screen. You've played a lot of different roles in the real screen, in real life.
Yeah.
And, whether it was a short military career, a very successful business career. There's a lot of things that you've done. And when we talk about stories, you talked about Bob Dylan telling a lot of these stories. Your story, when I read it, it's more of an adventure. Like there's a lot of climaxes, a lot of peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
And so maybe just take us back in a time machine. You were born in Dublin.
Born in Dublin, and I grew up in Birmingham in England, which is a huge metropolis, and it is the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. So it's the heartland of the UK and the heartland of industry in Europe too. So a tough city.
Right.
Have you ever watched Peaky Blinders?
No.
Peaky Blinders is in Birmingham, and it's about the Irish gangs there. But I had a very privileged upbringing. My folks moved from Ireland penniless, extremely hard-working people. My dad's from Belfast in the north of Ireland, and my dad worked for Alcan, which is a Canadian company, and they cast aluminum pistons for cars, and Mom worked at Lucas, who produced car components. Right. Then Dad went to work at Land Rover over the years. He worked there for years and years. So I grew up in a very blue-collar, industrial city, but my folks, I never lacked for anything.
Right.
So whilst we weren't wealthy in monetary terms, we were really wealthy in terms of culture and a hard work ethic. My mum was a tiny little Dublin woman, as tough as nails. She taught me fearlessness. She really did. I grew up not scared of anything. Right. And I had my ass kicked a few times as a teenager, but I have never really been scared of anything.
Really?
No.
That's actually an interesting one, because that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. When I think about bravery, you had a military career, and of course you had to be somewhat brave to do that.
No, I was a reservist. I never saw it. My son's brave, like he's been in Iraq. I played with guns and went to Germany and Norway and Cyprus as a reserve officer. So I never saw a bullet fired in anger. So I actually don't know what I would do if I was under fire. No man does.
Wow.
I think you can talk brave, you can pretend to be brave, but as they say in the military, when the shit hits the fan, that's when you really know. And sometimes bravery is just sheer fear. You do something out of adrenaline. And I don't mean I'm brave in life. I'm just not scared. So when I get an opportunity, I don't hesitate. I don't think twice. I don't think I can't do it. I don't think I don't have the skill set. I don't think, oh my God, what if I fail? Those thoughts never cross my mind.
Has there ever been a situation where you felt scared?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we talked a little earlier about my journey with alcoholism, and that's been a long journey. I'm 23 years sober shortly. When I first hit bottom and went through the process of overcoming denial about what was wrong with me, I was scared shitless about what that was, because I think for the first time in my life I realized something else was in control of me and not me.
Right.
And that was a very unsettling, unnerving, terrifying experience for me.
And being the entrepreneur and a high-performing individual that you are, oftentimes we use some type of substance to maybe hide. Right? And alcoholism and substance abuse is something that's rampant, especially now.
It is. I think it always has been, but we are starting to talk about it. And with over 20 years sober, I've only spoken in business publicly about it for the last year and a half.
Wow.
Because it is there's no upside to people in business knowing that you're a recovering alcoholic, generally. Because there's an immediate shift in their attitude toward you, immediate. You become a risk. And I recall when I first got sober, and I'd been drinking for years. I had an Amex card with my job. I was a senior vice president. I could drink the best in the best hotels and the best bars. And I drunk like that since I was 12.
Right.
And occasionally somebody might take me to one side and say, maybe you should not be the last person to bed at a conference. That was it. When I got sober and I actually told my boss, and I'd been sober a little while at that point, I became a human resource problem at that point. Like, what are we going to do with him now? We got this guy, like, he's got to go to rehab or something. Is he going to relapse?
Right.
I wasn't a problem when I was drinking, but I became a problem when I got sober, which is a real twist when you think about it. Right. So there is a stigma. There's less of a stigma as a male to you being a drunk. There's a lot of stigma attached to you being a recovering alcoholic, and you get that name attached to you.
Right. Especially in sales, when you have that expense card, it's almost part of the culture. Because I was in 22 years in the investment world. I watched Wolf of Wall Street. I thought, hey, I kind of lived through the tail end of that, and you go through that. Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with alcohol. I have learned I have no off switch, like genetically or chemically. Like, if you put a beer in my body, I cannot predict what's going to happen. Wow, that's it. It's pretty simple.
What was a turning point? There must have been a turning point when we said, I can't keep doing this.
I was living in White Rock in BC on the beach with a house that overlooked the San Juan Islands. I don't know what that's worth now. Yeah. I had all of it. Like, flew business class, transatlantic, traveled, ate in the best restaurants. My former wife, God bless her, she's passed away since, but my former wife said she'd had enough and kicked me out. Wow. And I don't talk about this very often, but I went to AA to try and get her off my back. I thought, if I could demonstrate that, like, I've got this,
right?
I'd be okay. Well, I'd get back in. I still have my job and everything. I'm not I'm not what you would think of as an alcoholic lying under a bridge with the brown paper bag.
Functioning alcoholic.
I was high functioning alcoholic. Yeah. She saved my life. Wow. As I went to an AA program, and I am not saying that AA is the only route. It was my route, right? And I don't talk about AA. It's called AA for a particular reason, but that was my chosen route. I heard my story. And I was like, oh shit, right. That's what's wrong with me. And it is a disease of the feelings. So, like, I'd gone through life I'm a very gregarious man, but I could be lonely in a football stadium. And I'd been like that for a lot of years. And I realized that I think we talk about having a soul sickness. I had a hole in me that alcohol filled, and I wasn't sure what it was. And I'd had that for a long time, and I was raised, my mom's devout Roman Catholic. And that's a startling revelation in your life when you sit and hear your story from somebody who's been in recovery for some time. And he was a guy from Liverpool in England. His name's Frank, and he lived in a studio basement suite in Surrey and cut keys for a living. I thought, shit, like what? This man's got nothing to say to me.
Right.
Nothing. Like what could he possibly teach me? I wear $3,000 suits and drive a Beamer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But he described his feelings, and he described particularly the feeling in the morning after, the feeling of, I used to wake up with this feeling of impending doom constantly. And I thought, oh my God, like I can't live like this anymore. So I think I reached a point, I could have carried on drinking for a long time. I think it would have killed me physically eventually, but I couldn't. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Right.
And I think there are millions of us humans, and I'll talk particularly about men who have that feeling and just somehow muscle through it because we think that's what we're supposed to do. And I think that's what's killing our young men at the moment, is that feeling like success is a Ferrari or a big house, and I need to be seen to be successful and smell like success and look like success, and I have to have a six-pack and like shave my legs, and I have to have my hair cut a certain way. I think the pressure on our young men is brutal at the moment. But I will say the best generation of fathers I've ever seen are millennials.
Is that right?
Absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
What would your definition of an alpha male?
It is not a guerrilla-style guy beating his chest. Yeah. I think I recognize an alpha male when they walk into a room. There's a quiet confidence.
Right.
That's it.
It's good because, that alpha male stigma.
It's bullshit.
It's bullshit. That's right. Yeah, I believe that an alpha male, when you take a look at Latin, alpha is the beginning and omega is the end.
Mm-hmm.
Alpha male to me is who were we as men before the world told us what we should and shouldn't be or dress or whoever. Yep. It is the most authentic self. And I know you don't like the word authentic.
No,
but
I don't love it. No.
But it is the most realist version of us. That and an alpha personality, I don't think necessarily means you're masculine or feminine.
No.
Just you're completely confident in your own skin.
Yeah, and I think getting confident in your own skin can start very young.
Right.
I mean, I kind of was in my late teens, and I actually didn't give a shit what people thought about me, and I don't mean that in any negative way. Right. So I've always dressed the way I want to dress. Mm-hmm. Like I've gone my own way in life. And I'm an impulsive individual. That's how I ended up back in Canada. I very much trust my instincts. I trust my soul. I trust my higher power now. That's very much part of my life. I know when I try and manage things, generally they don't work out. Right. When I trust my instincts and let things flow, they always work out.
So trusting
that's a big step.
It's huge. It's huge. Trusting your instinct. What was the instinct for you to move from banking, insurance into a completely different realm in the grand?
Sure.
What's the instinct there saying, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna run with something, and here's a new adventure?
That is an interesting question, and it's not the first time I've been asked it, and probably my answer's been a bit different as time has gone by. But Marcy served on the board at the Grand for a few years, and both her and I were sponsors there. We bought tickets, we went to shows and parties, and loved the place. And we did a bit of strategic work with the leaders that were there, and I did a little bit of coaching work with two of the leaders, and one of them was quite amazing, Mark Laws, who was the creative director, an incredibly talented creative individual. And things got tough at the theatre with the leadership there. I think there were some issues, and Marcy and I were hiking at Zion National Park in Utah, and the board called me and asked me if I'd step in for a couple of weeks just to look after it. Mm-hmm. The previous management had departed, and literally I had a set of keys. I had no staff, no money, no shows, no nothing. Wow. Zero. I mean, it was as broken as it gets. And I sat in the theatre one Sunday evening, and somehow I felt like she spoke to me. Right. And the message I got loud and clear, why don't you do it? And I thought about it even logically as a businessman. Who would not want to run that brand?
Right.
Like, who would not want to run one of the oldest, most beautiful established brands in Canada?
Right.
Like Fred Astaire and the Marx Brothers and Nellie McClung and Sarah Bernhardt and the two wars and Korea and the Great Depression. And who would, as a business guy or a human or an entrepreneur, who would not want to put that back on its feet?
Right.
And I felt, particularly at that time in Calgary, it was very important we had some form of lighthouse downtown of cultural inspiration. So I called the board and said, would you consider me? And I gave up my business with my wife to go do that. And they were very grateful about it and said, yes. I got no experience. I've never run a theatre. I've never worked in the arts. I've never run a building of that size. I've never been a landlord. I've never run a creative team.
Right.
Like, I don't know one end of a theatre from the other, but I put people around me who did. And I had a very young team, very inexperienced team, and they all came from the arts. We as a group decided we hated terms like diversity and inclusivity. We decided we would have a welcome policy there. And from day one, we decided we would open the doors of what had traditionally been a white, liberal, contemporary arts theatre to all Canadians. We don't care where you're from, what your religion is. We don't care. If you love art, this is a safe place and you're welcome here. And that has created a cultural movement of which the Grand was part, that I have been so honoured to be a small part of. And I hope that carries on. I hope Calgary took some notice of what my young team did there. And I hope all Calgarians can continue to push to be part of those institutions. I think that's very important.
You know, the history of that organization and theater was very instrumental in so many different movements. Right? And then there's so many
Nellie
different
McClung
stories.
had a women's voting rights rally there when women were considered property in Canada. Just think about that.
That's crazy. You know, speaking of movements and being part of history, one, it's amazing that you have turned this around, because there was some trauma, you know, with the history of the Grand. I know prior to you joining, there was some negative stigma just in the work culture, and then you came around and changed it.
Well, there was nothing to change, to be honest, because they'd all gone. So the easy part was for me to put together a team that embodied our movement, and make it young enough to have an incredibly naive, creative vision.
Right.
And I don't mean naive in a negative way. They didn't have any baggage.
Right.
Right. They didn't know any other way to do it than the way they did it. I think our brand had a lot of damage. It had a lot of negative social media. If you forget about the negativity and focus on what my team was doing with our lovely, naive creativity, the brand repaired itself. And I love talking about the Grand. I would speak anywhere, anytime, any opportunity about that beautiful space. It has soul.
Right.
I grew up on Tamla Motown music. I love soul music. I love reggae. That theatre's got soul. Like, it really has, you know, and on a handshake over coffee, making Treaty 7 Cultural Society made its home there, and I was blessed that they agreed to do that. And that was the first Indigenous theatre company in Canadian history to be resident in a major Canadian theatre. It's where they belong. It's their home, and it was their land. I didn't feel in any way that was any kind of political statement. They belong there. End of story. and we've got Wakefield Brewster, our resident poet. Special character, that man.
Right.
And he embodies the soul of that building. And then we've got our beautifully talented actors with Black Radish Theatre Company. Just remarkable, the heartbeat of the theatre scene in this city.
I don't usually talk about very, polarizing topics, but you did a post not too long ago this year that, to me, embodied a lot of courage as a leader. And it was right at the peak of when George Floyd dies. So George Floyd passes away.
Yeah.
You make a decision to put Black Lives Matter here on the Grand.
Yeah.
Like, how did that come to be? I actually, when I'm talking about it, I'm getting goosebumps because it's such a great statement. I
decided that my voice was not relevant in that debate. I am a 60-plus-year-old white man from Europe. I have no voice at the table in this.
Right.
However, Wakefield Brewster and many of our BIPOC and LBGQT community from the Grand do have a voice. So I gave that voice an ability to be public. And I don't need to give them permission or grant them space. I said, could you speak on behalf of our community? Right. Not me.
Wow.
I don't want to make a flowery statement. I don't want to make any great proclamations. That's not my place to do this. What should we do? And so we did Wakefield Brewster's piece in the theatre called Blackout. Amazing. Just an incredible piece, very emotional. And I left it to our community to decide what the theatre should do, and that was the result.
I think that embodies true leadership, though. There's a difference between a manager and a leader, and a leader is someone who builds other leaders, but also knows when to take a step back. And one of the things, going back to a point that you talked about men, where I think we may fall short sometimes is we let our ego get in the way. And it just sounds like you have your ego in check. You could have easily had a bigger ego, but you just said, hey, I'll take a step back.
I think when I sat and thought about it, I'm the least appropriate person to be the spokesperson for the Grand community on that.
Right.
There are other topics when I am the right spokesperson, but not that. And I think the Grand community embodied everything that the Black Lives Matter organization was fighting for. You're welcome here. That's it. You matter here. So literally all I did was type it in on a computer, and it popped up on the screen. And I didn't ask permission. I didn't consult anybody except the community that belongs to the Grand. It's their voice, so it wasn't my decision.
I still think there's a lot of leadership behind that.
I disagree with you on that one.
Right.
I think I was in a position where I could step back.
Right.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
I find that a lot of people just shy away from very political statements or taking a stand on anything. And so the fact that you're able to take a stand, given your position, given your demographic, where you are, I think that in itself is very powerful.
I got some personal heat about that from a couple of directions. Frankly, I don't give a shit.
Good.
They're not relevant voices to me. The overwhelming reaction to what the Grand community did was extremely positive. And the march went past our building. Right. And I think it was important that our community showed the marchers that you matter here. I can't speak for anywhere else in the city, but you matter here. In these doors, in this building, in these seats, in our bar, you matter here.
It's powerful because that just reminds me of Gandhi's quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world." Yeah.
Right. But I again, the credit goes to the Grand community.
Love it.
I don't have a voice in that debate.
Speaking of the Grand, one thing I've loved, you've embraced so many different cultures there. The Filipino community has done shows there.
Yeah.
And it's
Our noisiest show.
Yeah. it's just amazing that you're doing that. What's the most memorable event that off the top of your mind you think about all the great things that
well, we had an African event called Ugansha. I think it was Ugansha. I'm probably pronouncing that totally wrong. Incredible, like Nigerians and Ugandans, just remarkable. I have a really close affinity with our African Calgary community here. They have embraced everything that the Grand stands for. They, without hesitation, walked in and just took it over. And we had an incredible Filipino event in there. I think you were the MC that night. I have never seen such a noisy crowd in my life, and the color and the noise, like we could have been in Manila that night. So what is incredible for me is watching the Grand actually be a chameleon through all of those things. Like we're Manila one night, the next night we're Athens, the next night we're Rome, and then we're Beijing or Hong Kong. We did a Chinese New Year in there, so
really cool.
That to me epitomizes everything that the Grand stands for. And, I made a conscious decision on day one. The doors were open, no restrictions. Like you don't even have to be a good artist,
right? Like
if you love art, you got a space here. So we fully utilize all the spaces in the theatre. We've currently got salsa dancing in there at the moment.
Oh, no way. Yeah. Great. Are you much of a salsa dancer?
No.
But you respect the music and the...
I love it. And Kelly Larnan has been a huge supporter of the Grand, and she gets to rehearse in there 2 or 3 times a week. Right. So, yeah, I think what the Grand has stood for is what is so beautiful about Calgary in Canada, in my opinion, and it's why I came back here. Like my children have fully embraced all of the community cultures that exist in this country. Mm-hmm. They're fully immersed in them.
There was thank you for inviting me, because I got invited to the Alley party.
You did,
and it was great. And when you invited me, and one of the moments that I remember so clearly was that you were authentic. I know you don't like the word authentic, but you were everywhere and your energy resonated. I was doing a live feed on Facebook and you just walk up to me, kiss me on the cheek, right? And you're just...
And I don't even drink.
Yeah, you don't. But it was that... Was it something about the magic of the Grand that brought out that showmanship, or is that just naturally you as a person?
I think I have some natural tendencies in that direction, but I believe that the role of a leader, be it a CEO or an officer in the military, is to be on the very front line of their business. I think the CEO is the best salesman in the company. He is the heart and soul of the PR. He's the heart and soul of the brand. Mm-hmm. And I think too many of our leaders get to a certain point and delegate that.
Right.
I think that your brand and the personal brand, your personal brand and the brand of the company that you run should almost be one and the same. Mm-hmm. And I think definitely the Grand and I were...
match made in heaven?
We were really well integrated. But I think far too many of our leaders forget what their real role is, and they sit in their offices and mull over numbers. I believe if you do the right thing, the money follows. Mm-hmm. It does. You got to have certain business disciplines. I get that, but I think you've got no business being a leader if you're not inspirational. Mm-hmm. Like go find something else to do.
Right.
Yeah.
You talked about being the leader of the Grand and actually turning it around and all these amazing stories. You mentioned to me even before this interview that you went through bankruptcy as well, and as a leader, you have to walk yourself through it. Like, what happened, and how did you go through it? Because I think right now there's a lot of people who are going through it with the pandemic, and it's real. And when you're going through that, you feel like you don't have any hope.
Yeah.
How did you pull hope?
Well, for me, it was in early sobriety when in my first couple of years, and I lost my marriage. I lost my job, so my source of income, and I ended up with both children full time. So I was out at work for a spell, and then I took a lower paid job. I put my ego to one side. I had to put food on the table, and I had, and I see this often, and it's something that I've seen prevalent in Calgary and in a number of our more marginalised communities, is that we live beyond our means. So we think we earn 100,000 and we think we earn 400. Right. So we forget the lessons that our mothers and fathers taught us about shopping smart, saving up, right. Those kind of principles. You don't buy it if you don't have the money. Right. And I think credit got to be super easy. So for me, my fall from grace was coupled with bankruptcy. So things were bad anyway, right. So it was my last resort at that time, and right. It was personal. I will say I have paid every single penny back. Every single penny that I walked away from in bankruptcy, I've gone back to each and every creditor and paid every penny back.
That's huge.
So I never walked away from my debt, and I think bankruptcy is viewed as a tool to avoid your debt these days. And it was my only way out. And I do regret having done it. I should have dug in a little deeper at the time. But I made my mind up that I wasn't going to have that scar tissue, right, of knowing that as a man, I walked away from my debt. And most of the banks didn't want to take it from me. Like, I'd show up and say, I've got $3,000 for my debt. They go,
right.
What? What?
But I think it just speaks about your character, though, because most people, they could walk away with it, start fresh, but it really talks about your integrity, your character, owning up to your responsibility. Yeah. And that just goes back to being, prior to this interview, being a real man.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of work to do with teaching our young men how to be real men. And I've got a friend with 3 boys. We get to talk about that from time to time. We got to teach them to be a little kind and a little patient, right. And a little bit less self-centered around what they look like and what they're going to drive and where they're going to live. What kind of chick am I going to be married to, right. And what is she going to look like? And I think kindness is a word that is not used enough. In my opinion. I think, a good man is kind. Doesn't mean he's a pushover. Doesn't mean he's easy to manipulate. Right. Doesn't mean that he has no strength of character. It takes great strength of character to be kind. And I've learned if I give a guy that needs $20, my last $20, I get paid back 100-fold. Right. I don't know how that works. Right. I don't care how that works, but it works. And I've done that consistently. And that's not about me being a good guy. There's a bit of a selfish part of that. I know it works. Right. So, but I think we got to start early with the young men. Right. My son is a great example. He's grown up, he opens the door for ladies and carries their bags. And that is chivalry. That's not being misogynistic. That's paying a respect to a woman and her maternal place in society and her maternal place in his life. It's not about her being unable to open the door or too weak. For me, that is paying respect to her as a powerful woman. Right. You go before me. Right.
And I think you've really raised your son to become a gentleman.
Yeah, and he is, and he's a fine soldier in the Canadian military. He served overseas last year, 10 months in Iraq. And just like me, he's a flawed individual, and he's an asshole from time to time, just like I am. But I think opening the door is seen as has been seen too often as the woman is weaker, she's not able to do it. That's not what that. Being a gentleman is not about that whatsoever. Whatsoever. It is actually a bow and a nod to the power of the woman that you're in the presence of.
It's
And you got to think about that, and that's what it truly is. It's respecting the power of the woman. And I am I'm an unashamed feminist.
Yeah.
Unashamed.
I love it. My mother did a lot of amazing things in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And when she retired, we were going through the closet one day and I see a bunch of trophies. And I said to her, "What are all these trophies?" And they're like, "Yeah, they're just trophies that I have accumulated in my life."
Mm-hmm.
But she never shared those trophies with us. She came home and we just saw her as mom. She cooks and cleans, but she had a fantastic career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I agree with you. We don't celebrate or pay homage to women.
And I think the more we embrace women leading in our society, the better our men will be.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, when we start to respect the very special power that a woman and position that a woman holds in society, we lose some of our ego and we lose our misogyny because there's a mutual respect going on. Right. And part of our problem is we, over the decades, particularly my generation, but many, many generations before that, we have not respected the female in our society the way she deserves to be. And there are cultures that do. Mm-hmm. Where the woman is the very clear leader in the community. Right. So we end up with this dismissive attitude of it's just a woman, or we better have a woman at the board table because we need to.
Right. Status.
Instead of saying, when we embrace the female power, look what that does to our company. Right. Even if you take it from a purely selfish point of view, the power of having females in your company is remarkable. My best sales teams, beyond a doubt, over the decades I've been in business, have been female-led.
Mm-hmm. Well, Hillary almost became the first president of the United States. Very close.
Kamala will be.
Well, I was going to say she could be, right?
Oh, she will be.
And I thought Michelle Obama would be a great representative. I know that I saw one of your posts about her book. Yeah. I found her confidence. I think she's just such an elegant, classy person.
Yeah, and I think she is a very prominent example of female power and grace. But they're all around us. Like my wife is an incredible example of that. Your wife is, Vivian. I've got a friend in town here, Missy. She is a single mom with 4 children, 3 boys, and a special needs little girl, Molly. That is very special to me. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she can run that house. I don't know how she manages. I can't run a business even close to as well as she can. I am not even a fraction of the leader my wife is. Not a fraction. I have been very privileged because I'm male and white that I get first pick of jobs. Right. I do. And Marcy has consistently been overlooked as secondary in the businesses we've run by men. And Marcy is by far the better leader out of the two of us. Wow. By far the better. She's the better business person. She's more logical than I am. She's more methodical than I am. She's got a better rational mind than I have in business. And we work very well together because of that. I'm a powerful male. She's a powerful female. It works very well together. Right. But she's consistently overlooked. So the Michelle Obamas of this world are all around us in our everyday life. Your mother's a great example. My mum was tough. She's tougher than I could ever possibly hope to be. Right. With the health challenges that she's faced in her 70s and 80s, would break. I mean, to be honest, the common cold will put most men off their feet. Right. Right. So, she's a great example. I agree, and I admire her. All politics aside, I've got a great deal of admiration for Rachel Notley, who's the Premier here. Put your politics aside. Right. Incredibly strong, resilient woman. They're all around us. They're in our homes. They're working in our restaurants. They're running supermarkets. And I think there is such an upside to our current problems in society to saying, hey, look, we fucked it up. Like, here you go.
As successful men or men in a position of influence, what do you think we need to do then to promote that? I mean, we could go on a podcast. This is great, but to get it, to push the message even further.
I like what we did at the Grand, I think, is just quit with the equality stuff. Like, they're way more equal than I am. So it's almost derogatory to me to say we've got an equality policy.
Right.
Like, I'm not even in the ballpark of most women leaders. I'm not. Like, to just shut up about that stuff. We actually don't need diversity policies. They're just written garbage. Open the door to the best. Just hire the best humans, the kindest. You'll be surprised how quickly the room fills up with female leaders of all ethnic backgrounds. Right? And I will say over my career, inadvertently, and I admit this fully, inadvertently, there have been many, many, many better qualified women than I that didn't get the job I got.
Wow.
Right, over the time I've been in business. I look back on that now and I shudder. But I know that happened. And at the time, it seemed okay. It never was okay. I can't make an excuse. That's what it was like back then. It was brutal for any woman to make her way in business. So I'm sitting in a room, there are 3 better qualified female candidates. I'll get the job. I know I've benefited from that.
Right.
Exactly the same with candidates of ethnic backgrounds. I've been in a room, they're better qualified, they're probably better humans than I am. I got the job. So, like, it's hard for me to look back on that and stomach it. So we got to cut that crap out pretty quickly. And I think it's stop with written policies. You don't need them. You stop talking about it. Stop sitting around at strategic meetings trying to build, like we need to hire more people of color. Bullshit. Hire, at least give them the opportunity to show what they can do.
Right. Absolutely.
I have been very privileged to benefit from the white male dominance in our world, and I know that, and I can't be ashamed of it now, but I've been able to do something about it as a leader. You
view the world with such a humble and insightful lens, being in the position that you are in, the life of privilege. I see, what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of hope for change moving forward, or you can see the hope for change.
Incredible hope. Right. And I think politics aside, I think Donald Trump signals the end of the white guy dominance. He has proved to be such a horrific nightmare in a world that's struggling to find its feet and embrace the female power on the planet and people of color and our Indigenous brothers and sisters and our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. I think the world can't have that any longer.
Where do you see the world in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think we're going to see like a tsunami of change. And I think it's going to be led by the communities that have been marginalized over the last number of centuries.
Right. What about technology?
Well, I've been around the front line of technology since the 60s.
Right.
And any man in his 60s who says, I don't understand technology, that's horse crap. Right. I saw the first pager, the first cell phone, the first computer, the first fax machine. Like, oh, whoa, I can send this piece of paper to London. I fully embrace my iPhone. I'm on Instagram. I have my own personal brand on Instagram. So I think we're going to reach a point where the addiction of technology is going to have to be tackled. And we need to embrace what technology can do positively in the world. And I think we haven't really understood its power to this point. So we get to use it for means of ego and self-promotion. And I'm as bad as the next person. Like I admit that. But, I think when technology starts to be used to improve our communication as opposed to isolating us, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to think a phone call within a year or so, and not have to speak. And I found Facebook, for all its flaws, incredible for reuniting my family around the planet. We can start to take that as a guiding principle for those kind of platforms and not politics. I think it's huge benefit. I went to meet my cousin Anna in San Francisco last year. She's my dad's brother's girl. We've never met. And we met on Facebook, and Marcy and I went to visit her in Pacifica, and she'll be listening to this.
That's amazing.
So Facebook did that.
Yeah. Technology has been disruptive in nature, but it's also been disruptive in a good way.
I think, I agree with you. It's just moved too fast for us to keep up with. Our brains aren't as quick.
Right. Well, it's sped up the whole process that would have taken, let's say, 10 years to 3 years. Yeah. You have grandmothers now ordering on Amazon, and they've never ordered on Amazon before.
Marcy and I have got two mentors down in Orinda in California, Tony and Lucy. They're in their late 90s. So he fought in Stalingrad during the war. He's Austrian. Walked home from Russia after they surrendered. She was a nurse, incredible story. He was a model, and, she orders on Uber on her iPhone. She orders skip the dishes. She's 97.
Right. People are going to be living a lot longer with technology, though.
I think so.
And have longevity risk.
Yeah. I think we've barely seen the start of technology and what it can do. And when it's used for good, I think it's remarkable. It just grew faster than we knew what to do with it, I think.
You seem like you're doing with technology, because you became the one-man marketing show at the Grand, and you built up your own brand over social media. I've been following you for quite some time, and I read all your posts.
I'm random.
You know what? But it's random, but it's what you feel in the moment. You're so authentic. I'm trying not to use a word to what your brand shows on social media and who you really are as a person. It's in sync.
It's actually a look into my life is all, not what I think my life should be or what I want you to look at it like.
Right.
That I actually post what's going through my head sometimes, and that's not always good, but it's like, where am I at today?
Right.
Literally.
You have created this brand. One of the areas of this brand is, everyone knows, we know you're a model, very handsome man, but you're very stylish in general. And I've seen some of the pictures there. Who inspires you in terms of fashion? Because that's one thing that I want to ask you about, because you dress really, really well, you carry yourself well. And actually, I read something that you described your style as Dublin streetwear.
Yeah.
What is that?
I have no idea. I thought it sounded so good.
It does sound great.
I love a traditional button-down shirt with a edgy vest and a pair of jeans and a good pair of boots.
Right.
I always feel like I'm almost I feel like a bit like a musician at that point.
Right.
I like that style. My style, I don't know if you can call it a style, but it transitions. I don't spend large amounts of money on my style. I don't. So I have become a very shrewd shopper in the stores, and I'm a very shrewd shopper in thrift stores, because men don't know what they're looking for.
Right.
So one of my favorite brands is John Barbados. Very edgy, very punky. I love it. And I'll very often find a brand new pair of shoes from that brand, and they're $600 or $700 US. Yep. I'll find them for $20 unworn. Really? So I enjoy the thrill of the hunt. I'm not afraid to buy in Old Navy or the Gap if it's in keeping with what I like to wear.
Right.
I don't give a shit about brands. I don't. John Varvatos is my favorite brand by far. It's way overpriced for me, but occasionally I'll pay full price. Like if I put it on and fall in love. I think too many people follow trend instead of their own style. Right. And growing up in the UK in the 60s and 70s, fashion you created yourself and trend is what you bought in shops. So I think trend, I don't care. Right. I don't care about brands. I don't care about like Hugo Boss. I don't have to have a label. I literally don't.
I think it's the most fashionable thing is confidence. As long as you feel confident,
you can wear anything.
You can wear anything.
Yeah, and I think wear what you like. Mm-hmm. And when you wear what you like, it feels comfortable and good. Mm-hmm. And when you feel comfortable and good, you're confident. The whole thing's just like a little magic ball at that point. Right. And I actually don't care what anybody else thinks about what I wear. I'm colorblind.
Are you really?
I'm totally colorblind. I've got a red-green deficiency. So I have to regularly ask Marcy, like, is this okay? So when I lived on my own, I stuck with blacks and greys and navy blue. I couldn't venture to purples and things like that because I didn't know what they were.
No way.
Yeah, so I'm adventurous with color, but I have to go sometime. I brought some mint green chinos home last year, very mint green, and I thought they were khaki.
No way.
Yeah, so like
hey, you pull it off if you're
Marcy
confident?
I could. They were very and Marcy said, what color do you think these are? So, yeah.
Talk to me about mentorship, because that's something that I know that you've mentored a lot of people. Who's mentored you?
I've been very blessed to have a wide range of mentors over the year and nothing particularly formal. I was a health service administrator at one time. I was the administrator of some hospitals, and I had a female boss back then. That was, Ruth Cathcart, her name was. No, Ruth Wheelwright. And it was very rare to have a woman in that kind of position. Right. And she was the stereotypical English battle axe. And she was brutal to me, and some of the lessons I've learned for her.
She's like the Iron Lady.
Oh, Jesus. Like, she just stood no bullshit off me whatsoever. Remarkable. She taught me so much. I think my son has been a good mentor to me. You know, he's taught me a lot through some of his challenges. I'm blessed to have had Frank in my life from Liverpool. He's passed away now. Mm-hmm. I had a guy in the insurance industry, Tom, just a remarkable man, and he was a mentor for me in business and in life and in recovery. So I have a lot. I've had a lot of women, young and more vintage, around me in my life that have not hesitated to give me a verbal slap. And I've learned a lot of lessons from those. Have
you ever told them how you felt about them as a mentor, or is it just assumed?
Yes, I have. I think to open yourself to help somebody else, that's the first step to mentorship. To say I'm going to be a mentor is almost egotistical. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to mentor you. It implies I know more than you do. Right. You know, and don't be afraid to have a younger mentor. Don't be afraid to have a mentor from a different cultural background. Don't be afraid to have a mentor who's retired and not in business anymore. Mm-hmm. Tony and Lucy are great examples of that. We spend hours over dinner asking them, you know, like, have you guys stayed married for 70 years? Right. You know, like, what is it like to be 97? Like, my friend Tom, when he passed away, I got to sit and talk to him, and our relationship was that close. I could say he was dying. He had days left to live. What I was able to say, what's that like, Tom? Wow. You know, and he said, I'm not scared. I just feel like I'm moving on to the next stage of my life. Right. I like things like that. You don't forget. Is that mentorship? I guess. Mm-hmm. But even the term "I'm going to be a mentor" is I find it a little egotistical. I think if you are kind and you open your heart, and when somebody is clearly struggling or needs you, just reach out your hand. And sometimes it's just smiling at somebody, right. You know, like, or are you okay, man? You know, like, are you sure you're okay?
Right.
You know?
It's speaking your mind, right?
I think so, and just stepping back from the world a little bit sometimes, just taking a moment to give something to somebody else, it really takes you out of your own shit. You know, like, and it doesn't matter how bad your day is, to say somebody, like, you're okay, buddy. Like,
right. And I think we need that. We need to reach out. As human beings, we should be connecting in a world where technology can either be a connector or a, you know, divider.
I regularly reach out on social media to my friends. I've done it with you. Like, how are you?
Absolutely.
Are you doing okay? Like, what's happening in your world? And I think, you know, I get a lot of that back. And it actually doesn't matter whether I do or I don't. I think it's important to check in with people. And, you know, I met a guy on LinkedIn last year who'd lost his job. He's from Oklahoma. Never met him in my life before. He listened to one of my podcasts. He wrote me a beautiful email afterwards about how he felt it was inspirational. I dropped him a note this morning and said, "How you doing, Bob? Are you okay?" And he's got a new job now. I've never met him. I don't even know what he looks like. But somehow he reached out to me. He needed me somehow at that moment because of my story. And this morning I thought, I wonder how he's doing. Yeah. So when you get that, just take a minute. You know, something that's beautiful as well is sometimes send a postcard or a real birthday card or a letter, you know, or just, you know, when there's somebody old and retired sitting in a coffee shop, just sit down next to them and say, "How you doing?" I was just in Kelowna and I met a guy born in Dublin called Dermot. He's 87 and he sits in the same coffee shop every morning at 10 o'clock. I said, "Do you mind if I join you every once in a while?" He said, "What, you're lonely or desperate?" I said, "No, you're interesting.
Right.
You got interesting eyes."
You are a natural connector. You love connecting with people.
We all are.
I just want to ask you, there's so many great pictures of you on social media. You film really well. There's one picture that I found that spoke to me, and it's not even of your face. But I want you to explain what's going through your mind.
Oh God!
In this picture.
Clothes on? No. Oh yeah, that was a Connie Jacobs conference for the Bell Let's Talk week, and I think it was last year. That's Wakefield Brewster, and Wakefield and I met on David Schmeichel's podcast.
Okay.
About maybe 2 years ago now. We were on at the same time, and Marcy was on that podcast. And he gets me and I get him.
What does he mean to you?
That man has walked every inch of my journey at the Grand. He's encouraged me every inch of the way. He's a personal inspiration to me. And I don't like the word brother particularly.
Right.
But he is.
That's awesome. I love it. I saw it and I had to pull it out there.
I love
so
Wakefield
genuine.
and Wakefield loves me. We don't have to say it. You know, we've actually modelled together in Holt Renfrew. Okay. He got stopped on the escalator in Holt Renfrew. We were walking back to pick our clothes up to actually go down the runway, and two white members of staff stopped him, not me, and asked him what he was doing in here.
Right. I have another picture here, and if these people were to give us feedback on, or not feedback, advice, life advice.
Yeah.
What do you think they would say?
Okay, let me see this. That's Tony and Lucy. They're very much...
I love that picture.
They're very, very much people who live in the day. Like they don't have processed food in their house.
Wow. Okay.
Like they live on their own and they're 97. In fact, Tony's... I think he may even be older than that, and they're about 70 years married now. They are beautiful human beings that you would walk past in the mall because they're old. And you could quite easily just walk straight past them. And when you walk past them, you miss this incredible tapestry of history that they both have. And you've only got to spend a few minutes in their company and you see what pure love means. You can see it in that picture.
If you could tell them one thing right now and look in this camera, what would you tell them?
I love you both, Tony and Lucy. Like, I hope you live forever. You've inspired Marcy and I to be better people in just the short amount of time we've spent with you.
Love it. We are very close to the end, and we're entering this round that we call the Rise Round.
Okay.
So the Rise Round is a series of questions, very rapid fire. You answer it top of your head. Okay. Don't overthink it. It's real. It's right here.
I'm not capable of thinking.
And it's the most pressing questions that the audience and listeners want to ask you. And here it is. So there's a few of them. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Ready, set, 1, 2, 3. Rise Round. Here we go. Number 1. You have a huge personality, which obviously resonates online. Most people would say that personality is having a superpower. If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Oh, I'd like to be invisible.
It's so contrary to your personality.
Totally contrary, but like I could mingle without anybody even knowing I was there. I like the amount of socializing I could do in an invisible way would be remarkable.
Number 2, you've modeled for mode models.
Yep.
What's one fashion?
Hi, Kelly.
What's one fashion designer who you'd absolutely love to model for? I think you told.
Barbados. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
You're born like I was born in North America, as you can tell. The number one accent that we try to copy all the time is the English accent.
Yeah.
Give me your best Canadian accent.
It's impossible for me. I've tried so many times. The best I can do is, oh, that's great turkey, eh?
Okay, you got to do the A part. Great. If you were in a James Bond movie, would you be the villain or would you play James Bond?
Oh, give me a break. You know that answer already.
I know.
James every time, shaken, not stirred.
Who's the greatest James Bond? This is
Connery.
You know, I grew up with Roger Moore.
Yeah, I found Roger Moore is the epitome of the English gentleman. I found him a bit cheesy.
Yeah, well, he was.
Yeah.
I like Sean Connery too.
Yeah. Sean.
So, you know, alcohol's been out of your life for several decades.
Yeah.
You don't need to go into super detail on this. What's the most embarrassing drunken stupor story you got?
Oh, geez. I got arrested on a beach in Yugoslavia with a German girl doing what we shouldn't have been doing in the early hours of the morning and spent a night in a Yugoslavian prison.
That's a great story.
Free bed and breakfast, though.
Nice.
I was backpacking.
You're always looking for the positive side of a story. You know, we started talking about Sean Connery and movies and how he's on the big screen. Your life is like a movie. If your life was a movie, what movie would it be?
I don't know. There was an old movie I loved as a kid called Dam Busters. It was a World War II movie about where they bombed one of the dams in Germany, and I always remember the tune from the movie. And they did the impossible, like they built the bomb and breached the dam. And I feel like I've burst through so many dams in my life.
Love it, Dam Buster. Okay, good. You know, your wife has been such a supportive person in your life. If you could take your wife anywhere in the world, where would it be?
That's a really good one. I actually think we'd probably go to India, and we'd probably take a year to study meditation. The two
Love
of us.
it.
Yeah, in luxury, no caves.
No caves.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you ran your first half marathon at the age of 63, which is unbelievable. Yeah. What's the next physical challenge for you?
I think for me, I'd like to go play soccer again. It's the love of my life, and I played about 4 or 5 years ago, and wasn't in the kind of shape I would want to be. And I'd like to play at an appropriate age level instead of under 45. So I think my next challenge will be actually to go back. I love scoring goals. I'm a centre forward, and that's where I'd like to go.
That's awesome. You know what? I was at a concert many, many years ago. Rod Stewart must have been, I don't know, he must have been in his late 60s back then.
Kicked a football.
And he was kicking footballs. I was like, this guy is in amazing shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in amazing shape.
And Jagger's the same.
Same thing.
Like Jagger's remarkable.
Right. Yeah. You know, you've seen a lot of local artists come and go through the Grand.
Yeah.
Who's one local artist that's relatively unknown but super talented that needs props right now?
There's so many. There really is so many. A friend of mine called Andy Icon, he was a lead singer with a local band, and I forget their name. He's just launched his solo career. He's married to a really good friend of mine, Brandy. I'll post him on Instagram tonight. Like, he's got a remarkable songwriting talent. He's got a remarkable voice. Daria Purley just performed in the theatre a couple of weeks ago. Okay. Talented young lady, master's degree in some science. I'm going to meet her for a coffee over a business. Remarkable young lady. Alison Lynch, locally. Again, super talented, probably world class.
We will definitely promote them.
Yeah, sorry I said 3. There's probably another half a dozen. But yeah.
So in the Asian culture, we always get picked on for the very interesting food that we eat.
Yeah.
We will eat things that, a duck fetus.
Yeah.
It's called balut. But there's something that between our culture and the British culture, which is very similar. You guys eat black pudding, apparently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I had no clue that you guys ate black pudding, which is essentially
part of the Irish breakfast too, and the English breakfast.
Right. So for those who don't know what black pudding is.
Kind of like a blood sausage, right?
Blood sausage, really. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Well, I love steak and kidney pie. So.
Very interesting. What is the most disgusting British food?
Tripe.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that
tripe and onions is the most disgusting. And haggis tastes good, but it looks vile.
It looks gross. Right?
Oh, it looks vile. Yeah.
We touched on mentorship a while ago. Just briefly touched on that. If you were 25 years old and someone offered you $1 million or 1 year to be mentored by Bill Gates or Elon Musk, what would you do?
Branson.
Oh yeah, Branson. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Branson. So you would take the mentorship over the $1 million.
Yeah, Branson. Yeah,
love it.
It's going to make you way more than $1 million.
You know, life is very uncertain, and my father is currently going through dementia. I will likely lose him in the next couple of years, and he has Parkinson's disease. I always remind myself to say the things that are on your heart. If there was someone out there in the world that you could say something that you haven't said, who would it be and what would you tell them?
I've been estranged from my sister for some decades now. And I don't want to go into the reasons why. Her name is Anne. She lives up in the north of England. I would say to my sister, I love you. And I haven't had the opportunity to say that to her for probably 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
You could say to her,
I love you, Anne. I really do.
That's beautiful. Why do you think people are not living up to their potential? What's missing right now?
It's because they try to live up to their potential. The very concept of that is absurd.
Right.
You know, like I think just be the best you can day by day. Like, because you're going to spend your whole life feeling deficient somehow if you feel you've got to live up to your potential when you don't even know what it is. Wow. Like, so like, I quit with that stuff. Like, it makes you feel deficient. The very term I've got to live up to my potential suggests today I'm deficient. You're not. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing with who you're supposed to be doing it with today.
Awesome. I got 2 more questions.
Yeah.
If you had 60 seconds with your 15-year-old self, what would you tell him? Or 20-year-old self?
Quit the beer.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay. I think so. Yeah, it caused me a lot. I mean, it's very much part of my story. But I can't imagine how good a human being I could have been had I not been shackled by addiction.
Wow, interesting. My last question, what are you feeling right now?
I feel like I've just had a beautiful hour. I really do. I feel that I've had a chance to express some real bits of me, and I've heard some real bits of you.
You almost had me. I almost cried.
Yeah, you did.
Almost.
Yeah, you did. I want to speak to the young men out there, in 15, 16, 17. Stop trying to live up to impossible standards. Stop trying to live up to your potential. Stop trying to find yourself. Stop trying to find your purpose. You live in a perpetual state of less than when you're trying to do that. Like, you're not going to find it out there. You know, like, just be you. Be genuinely yourself. And please embrace the respect for our maternal society the way it should have. And fully embrace all of our cultural backgrounds.
Love it.
You know, we're all born with certain biases. I grew up my dad's from the north of Ireland, Catholic. I grew up thinking Protestants must be like two-headed people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still part of my instinct sometimes. I can't help it. Is that the troubles in Ireland were Catholic and Protestant, and somehow, you know, that got inbred in me. Stop doing that to our kids. You know, but bring your boys up to be
gentlemen,
proper men, and let your girls free. You know, don't shackle them with societal limitations at all.
You know, Tony, we are about the end of our chat here. I just want to tell you that it's been an amazing conversation. I think we live in a very divisive world. I think there are a lot of things out there that are separating us, causing a lot of anger, a lot of hate. We're in a world that's constantly in constant pain. I think we're healing. I think this pandemic has taught us a lot of different things. But I truly, with the bottom of my heart, believe that we need more people like you. I think we need a lot more people who, I know you hate the word, is authentic and real.
No, I get it.
But we need more people like you who have the courage to say the things that many men are scared to say, and share the message to really unify. What you did at the Grand, it's going to be forever in that story. It will be there, and love it.
There are people doing much better things in this city. You know, I'll say, like, my wife and the female team at Intergem we were talked about earlier, the two girls that run Fuck Up Nights here in town, like, they're inspiring and changing way more than it's ever possible for me to do. I can do my bit, and I think it's down to each of us to do our little bit.
And you, my friend, are a very, very humble man who's done a lot. You are an icon in the Calgary community. We respect you. We love you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Beyond my pleasure.
You know,
really,
it was an amazing time.
You're a classy human being.
Oh, thank you. And I certainly am excited to follow you on the next chapter.
Wherever that may be. Whoever I am.
Whoever you are. And I hope you live to 150 years old and there's many more adventures.
I intend to, so.
All right, my friend.
All right,
take care.
Thank you so much.